Um, Hi, everybody. It's lovely to see such a packed room, so thank you all for coming down. Um, my name is Sam Jackson. I'm the head of impact at Ecologi. And I'm going to fly straight in, actually, because I've only got a short period to cover what is, I'm sure you agree, quite a complex and nuanced discussion. And the title of my talk is The Way That We Think About Carbon Offsetting is All Wrong. And if there was a subtitle to it, it would be and how your business can use Ecologi to get started to get it right. I'm going to do a couple of different things, and it will be a whistle stop. We will do questions at the end, and we have got a stand at Ecologi, which is F54, which is just over here. So afterwards, do come and have a chat. I'll be around. We can answer questions and have a chat and learn about your businesses and what your businesses are all doing about carbon offsetting and the way that you're approaching it. But for the talk today, I'm going to start with a conundrum. I'm going to start with a statement which is true, and then I'm going to query it, and we're going to use that to question where we've been going wrong with carbon offsetting. Why is it that this system that we've built keeps breaking down? Why is it that it's not as effective as it should be? Why is it that the world is still warming and things like this? I'm then going to reframe it, and I'm going to try and encourage you to think about it in a different way that might be more useful. And hopefully you can take away from this session some practical tips to your businesses where you can rethink carbon offsetting and you can approach it in a slightly different way. That's a lot to cover, so I apologize that it is a whistle stop, but we're going to give it a go. The statement I'm going to start with is this. So this is paraphrased from the IPCC, that carbon finance is an effective way to drive much needed funding at scale to high quality projects which reduce emissions and generate other benefits as well. That is true. Carbon finance obviously includes various different things, but in the context of small businesses, which is the audience that Ecologi primarily speaks to, we're talking about carbon credits. Carbon credits, the same kind of credits from projects that are used for offsetting. That's a statement that is true, but obviously, as we know, offsetting as an industry, as a space, and as a project has its challenges, and enormous ones at that. So why is that? Why is it the case that this statement can be true, but we're still getting it wrong? Maybe it's because there's not enough carbon finance that's going to the projects. Maybe there's too many middlemen. Maybe it's because not enough companies are taking part. Not enough companies are doing it, so it's not getting the funding to the projects. Maybe it's because there are hidden sources of emissions. There's a story about this in the paper this week about methane emissions that aren't being declared and not being tracked and monitored. And maybe it's because there are reduction pledges that are being made but not stuck to. And I would put it to you that probably all of these are true. I'm sure you agree. But what actually is driving this? Where is it that we're going wrong with regards to offsetting? Well, my thesis is this. The way that we think about offsetting is just completely upside down. Now, you've probably seen this concept before. Hands up if you have. Kind of bathtub atmosphere, yeah. The general concept, and this is not an original idea, this has been around for about 15 years, is that emissions are a tap filling up a bathtub. The bathtub is the atmosphere, the water is the CO2, and the emissions that we produce are taps filling up the bathtub, and there are also, of course, net removals from land-based carbon sinks, ocean-based carbon sinks, and potentially in the future, at scale, tech-based carbon removals as well. Traditional carbon offsetting, the way that that interacts with this system is it's me over here on the left paying you over there to turn your tap off, and I'm going to carry on filling up the tub myself. But what that means is, because I'm only doing the offsetting on a compensatory basis, it means that that risks businesses being given free rein to continue emitting. So if that's my emissions today, and I'm just buying lots of carbon credits, it means that tomorrow I can continue emitting, and I can continue to increase my emissions, provided that I'm paying somebody else to stop theirs. That doesn't make sense. The way that we think about carbon offsetting on this basis leads us to believe then that we can solve climate change whilst continuing to emit as we have done. And that's not possible. That's arithmetic. That's not possible. So we need to rethink this. We do. And your next question is, okay, well, why would I offset at all then? Why don't I just stop doing that because it's clearly not working? Well, the answer is that statement at the beginning, because it is effective. It does provide a vehicle for at-scale funding to projects that do make an impact, not just on emissions, but on communities and biodiversity and things like this as well. So how do we reframe this? Hopefully you're still with me, because I am speeding through this in 10 minutes. Well, as well as supporting those other measures that are going to help people to decarbonize in their own value chains, the most important part of this diagram is this. It's my own tap. I need to turn it off. And if we do that, and if we focus on our own emissions first, then our charts start to look like this instead. And again, this is based heavily on some of the frameworks that exist out there at the moment. This one in particular is based on the SBTi Net Zero Corporate Standard, which most of you, I'm sure, will know. If we're focusing on our emissions and we're trying to reduce them by a minimum of 90%, then we can have a dedicated commitment to that whilst also funding high-quality climate impact through credits. What that means is you can still do ton-for-ton carbon offsetting if you want to, but it's going to get cheaper for you over time for a start because you're producing less emissions. But it also means that you can actually build a portfolio of projects that are impactful and matter to your business. You can turn this on its head to, rather than being compensatory and punitive, it's a positive thing that you're trying to do. You're trying to make some more good in the world by giving funds to these impactful projects. And that also doesn't just have to be carbon credits. It could be other things. You could be contributing to climate justice or education or equality or empowerment. And there's also a marketing benefit. Although I've put marketing benefit there, that's true, but also it's mitigating a PR risk, because we all know that if you're making unsubstantiated green claims, it's going to come and bite you at some point. And so if you're actually substantiating it with these emissions reductions whilst giving back and having a positive portfolio of impact, that will really substantiate those, and it will show people that you're really trying to turn your own tap off whilst supporting meaningful climate action around the world. And now, obviously, we're all at Innovation Zero, and I'm obviously here to talk about ecology as well. What we try to do at Ecologi is we try to provide that puzzle, the pieces to that puzzle for small businesses. So if you're a small business and you're going from 0 to 1, you're not going to have a sustainability team, possibly not even a sustainability executive. And what we try and do at Ecologi is we try to provide the tools to help you make that start on your journey. So first things first is Ecologi Zero. This is our free, easy-to-use carbon footprinting tool that will help you to plug in your data very quickly and get to grips with your carbon footprint. That will help you, show you where the emissions hotspots are in your value chain, and then you can start to make a plan to reduce them, set some targets and reduce them. Secondly, you can then build that portfolio of impactful projects by funding them through Ecologi. You can go over to our impact shop. You can quickly and easily fund projects that matter to you, to your business. Perhaps they're in a location that your business is based. Perhaps they're a particular project type that you care particularly about. And you can find them and fund them through the shop. So what we're trying to do at Ecologi is provide both sides of that graph for you. We can help you to start reducing your impact, turning your tap off. And we can also help you to find projects that are genuinely meaningful and impactful, both on climate, but also on social impact as well. Finally, some practical tips that I hope you can take away and use in your businesses. Firstly, and this is the one that I feel the most strongly about, actually, use offset as a verb, not a noun. Offsetting is a claim that you make. If you buy some carbon credits and you're using them to offset, that is a claim that you're making. It's an action that you're doing. If you're falling into the trap of saying we're going to buy some offsets, you've already decided that that's what you're doing with them. And it's very difficult to then reframe that in a positive light when you're thinking about reducing your emissions and having a positive impact elsewhere. So if you just use it instead as a verb, it's much easier to talk about we've purchased some carbon credits and we're going to or not going to use them for offsetting. And that unlocks a whole different way of thinking about carbon offsetting in general. Secondly, seize opportunities to do good. I mentioned, if you want to build a project portfolio of things that you care about, particular project types or particular locations, you can do that much more proactively, and you can build this holistically as something that your business is trying to do just to make that world a little bit of a better place whilst you're reducing your own emissions. You can seek out project integrity, co-benefits, or particular sustainable development goals that you care about, and you can go and pursue them if you do it in that way. And the reason that you can do that is because you're not seeing doing offsetting as a punitive exercise. We've made these emissions, we've got to offset them. That is out the window now. It's much more about we've measured our emissions, we've set some targets, we've achieved X amount of reductions this year. Where are we going to put our funding to a project that's going to support decarbonisation globally and support the restoration of ecosystems, for example? And finally, ask yourself what else. Obviously, carbon credits is just one of many things you can do. Offsetting is one of many claims you can make. What else can you do? Like, where else can you have an impact? Is it in climate justice? Is it in environmental legal defense? Is it in education or, you know, benefits for your staff for low carbon travel? Where is the additional benefit? And continually look for those iterative changes that you can make to make additional benefits as well. Okay. So a very, very quick whistle stop. But we've covered a lot of ground. We started with our conundrum. You know, carbon finance works, but it's clearly stumbling somewhere. We've identified where it is that we're going wrong. And where we're going wrong is thinking that we can solve climate change whilst continuing to emit at the same rate. That's not true. And we know that that's not true. We've then reframed it and we've gone, okay, if we're working on our own emissions reduction strategy, then carbon offsetting and buying carbon credits to support meaningful projects becomes a positive action that your company can take, and you can really run with that. And finally, I've given you those practical tips as well, which I hope are useful and I hope you take away, and I welcome you to come and chat to us at our stand afterwards as well. I think we've got time for questions.
We have. Let's give Sam a round of applause.
Thank you.
If you want to ask a question, just signal. We'll get the mic to you.
There's one over there in the corner.
Thanks, Sam. I love the breadth of what you talked about in terms of impact and how you can make that not only from kind of carbon offsetting. But in terms of carbon offsetting, what is the most effective way to decarbonise when it comes to offsetting in the breadth of things that you've looked at as Ecologi?
What's the most effective way
to decarbonise?
What would be the best offset to actually use as part of the decarbonisation?
That is a very, very large question. I think the first mistake people make, and this obviously happens quite a lot, there's a lot of talk in the press about the value of certain credits. The first mistake people make is to assume that all carbon credits are equal, and they are not. For example, at Ecologi, the credits that you'll find on our platform, they are newer than 5 years, which ensures that the methodologies they used are the newer ones. We don't endorse certain project types because the trade-offs, for example, with large hydro projects can often be too big. You know, trade-offs in terms of biodiversity or community impact can be too big. Things like this, you know, that it's not true to say that any credit is equivalent to any other credit for a start. I would always suggest looking out for projects which have benefits far beyond just the carbon benefit. You know, the way that we think about it at Ecologi is, sure, this project is accredited to a carbon standard. Good. What else? You know, where else is the benefit coming from? And benefits can include, you know, health benefits to individuals and families, local communities, and biodiversity. And those are the ones that we particularly care about. So it's kind of going out and finding those projects. And this does take quite a lot of research. It does take quite a lot of reading and getting to grips with the terrain. But those kind of projects that are genuinely contributing to multiple facets of the Sustainable Development Goals, those are the ones that I would pinpoint. And that's what we try to do as Ecologi, is try and find those so it takes a little bit of the pressure off when you're a business and you don't really know where to start, and we can help you find those projects. Another one over here? Or?
Thanks. I think Ecologi focus on small and medium-sized companies. What are the different challenges that larger companies face?
It's another good question. So the kind of space that Ecologi sits in is primarily about small businesses and medium businesses on the basis that they are in a unique position in that they are resource constrained. Often small businesses, they have loads of time, loads of opportunity, no money, no resource, no capacity, that kind of stuff. And so when it comes to something like this, a sustainability plan as a small company, it can very much often be the first thing to go if you need to cut costs, if you hit an obstacle and those kind of things. Larger businesses, it's a slightly different challenge. Particularly in the context of this discussion, albeit there are plenty of other things to think about, particularly in the context of this discussion, the way that you measure a footprint is going to be dramatically different for a large business. If you've got different premises in different locations, different regions, different energy mixes, different supply chains, could be, you know, lists of thousands and thousands of suppliers, and it gets very complicated very quickly. And but the kind of niche that Ecologi tries to fill is to kind of go, well, those larger businesses, generally, this is a bit of a generalization, but generally they're probably better equipped to essentially build a whole sustainability team, bring in a load of carbon accountants, these kinds of things, and tackle those challenges head on. Whereas with small businesses, we try and kind of support those businesses from 0 to 1 and kind of take them by the hand and kind of go from there. So they are very, very different, and we kind of made that differentiation quite deliberately to kind of go, well, this is where we think we can add value, and it's a slightly different thing for the much larger businesses.
Sam, I got to wrap you at this
Thank
point,
you.
I'm afraid. I've just observed that there are 1 or 2 large companies now starting to say they're not going to offset anymore and going to focus on carbon removal. This is encouraging, but I hope that's going to become a driver, because actually, if they do that and adopt the kind of strategy you're talking about, funding's going into the hardest thing to decarbonize. There is no doubt heavy industry we won't get on top of until 2040s plus in terms of its entirety. No echoes. Electricity, sure. So offsets that are going to renewable projects, why? Because it's already going to happen anyway. Offsets that are going to how do we decarbonize cement feels like a genuine contribution to the sort of collective journey. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The next presentation will be 11:20.